Okay, first of all, you likely saw Bernie Sanders resoundingly won the Nevada caucus. I think the final numbers, he had 47% or something like that. And the next highest was Biden at 21 or 23. So Bernie Sanders is well on his way to winning the Democrat nomination for the presidency. I want to talk about him today because what he's talking about, if you think Gavin Newsom is a tiny bit scary, you need to recognize who Bernie Sanders is, what he's talking about, what he's saying that he will do. Let me start with, he did an interview. Bernie Sanders was interviewed over the weekend out by Anderson Cooper on CNN. He was extremely friendly in his remarks about Castro, about first Fidel Castro in Cuba, and continuing today, talking about what a great revolution. He is very much praising and supporting Cuba and communist dictator Castro. Now, as he got pressed a little bit by Anderson Cooper, he's trying to back off. Bernie Sanders is trying to back off and say, well, let's be really careful about this revolution where that's kind of, and Anderson Cooper said, you're the one using it. You're the one saying, yeah, revolution. You want a revolution. I want to just tell you a little bit about, if you didn't know enough about Bernie Sanders' background, to understand how scary it is when he says he wants to bring a revolution to America. To start with, you likely know Bernie Sanders, was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. He pretty much had no job and no income and no skills and never participated in the private workforce like the vast number of Americans do. He managed, a lunatic-level communist, managed to get elected as the mayor of Burlington, Vermont in 1981 and served in that role till 1989. So he was 8 years mayor of Burlington, Vermont. During the 1980 presidential elections, so he's just about to become mayor of Burlington. So he's a Democrat Party official, although I guess he probably ran as a socialist. Democrats are working away in 1980 to get Jimmy Carter reelected. But mayor of Burlington, Vermont, Bernie Sanders, supported Andrew Pulley, the Communist Party's nominee. Actually, they call it SWP, Socialist Workers Party. It's the Communist Party. SWP is their acronym, Socialist Workers Party. So, first of all, Bernie Sanders supported in 1980 a guy named Andrew Pulley, who was the communist candidate for president. Well, all the rest of the Democrats are trying to reelect Jimmy Carter in the ridiculous miasma, and the economy was in ruins, everything was a mess, foreign policy was a mess, but Democrats are still working. Sanders went to support Andrew Pulley, and in the course of supporting him, Sanders said in 1980, while supporting this guy, Andrew Pulley, I fully support the SWP's continued defense of the Cuban Revolution. I got to tell you, this is going to cost him, by the way, his continued support of Castro, cost him some votes in the Florida Cuban population, because Florida is full of Cubans who escaped communism, who don't want to hear anything about this from the incoming president. 1984, 4 years later, Bernie Sanders, still governor of Burlington, Vermont. 4 years later, the entire Democrat Party working like crazy to try to support Walter Mondale, their candidate for president in 1984. Bernie Sanders was supporting presidential nominee Mel Mason. Mel Mason, former Black Panther, and in the course of his campaign, he was saying it was important for there to be fundamental alternatives to capitalist ideology. And Mason, this candidate that Bernie Sanders supported in 84, praised the Russian and Chinese revolutions and said the greatest example of a socialist government is Cuba. And Nicaragua is right behind, but it's still developing. Even when Bernie Sanders ran for mayor of Burlington, Vermont, he ran on platforms such as, actually, he ran for governor of Vermont, but he was mayor, then he ran for governor, ran on platform of nationalizing the energy industry, public ownership of banks, telephone, electric, and drug companies. So this is Bernie Sanders, his platform, when he ran for governor. Drug companies and of the major means of production. So he wants government ownership of all those things I just mentioned. This is Bernie Sanders. This is not back when he was a, goofball radical in college and maybe he hadn't figured out life yet. He was well into his 40s, I think in his 50s, while he was saying these things. He supported nationalization of energy, public ownership of banks, telephone, electric, and drug companies, and the major means of production, such as factories and capital, as well as other proposals such as a 100% income tax 100% income tax on the highest income earners in America. He has all the communist lingo down. He wants to create a situation in which the ordinary working people take what rightfully belongs to them. And he also talked about that time if workers, the communist term, if workers do not take power in a reasonably short time, this country will not have a future. I mean, the guy has been a radical communist his whole life. I was reading about his childhood when I don't have all the information in front of me, but one thing that I read about his childhood was his dad was also a completely unemployable loser, could not hold a job, kept losing jobs, and would lament at home about the horrible economic system in America. No wonder we have problems, because we have, and was also a radical socialist, was arguing for, the government's got to take control of this, and the government's got to fix this and prevent that. So Bernie Sanders is now apparently on track to become the Democrats' nominee for president. He's making many people very nervous, many people. But I want to get at something, two other points, and I'll turn to my next topic. But I want to, there was a video, and I don't have it ready today. I could play it, but a video of Bernie Sanders talking back in the 1980s. And he was saying he didn't like the authoritarian nature of Cuba. Of course, that was wrong. They shouldn't be so authoritarian. But, they had massive literacy. They had health care for all, and it was free. And, he was trying to straddle a fence and say, I really don't like Cuba's coercion, but I want the government to do everything that he or the socialists and communists think the government should do. Well, the government can only do that through coercion. Hardworking people do not simply volunteer their money, volunteer their fruit of their labor, their hard work, their family savings, and give it to the government because some nut job came along and decided to try socialism in America. So it was actually for Anderson Cooper, who is a CNN leftist. Even Anderson Cooper was trying to press him a little bit and say, he pointed out to him, by the way, 2/3 of the Democrats in the Senate have not signed on for Medicare for all. In fact, I want to read you this little vignette, this exchange between Anderson Cooper and Bernie Sanders, he who would be your president in a mere 10 months. So Anderson Cooper's asking him, you don't have the Democrats signing on. The cost is at least $30 to $40 trillion just for the first 10 years. 30 to 43 trillion. That's just one of your proposals. And you have, free public college, cancellation of all student debt, federal job guarantee, a Green New Deal to basically take over the entire energy industry and destroy the fossil fuel industry. So Anderson Cooper says to him, so how much would that cost, Bernie Sanders, you who would be president? Which Sanders says, well, obviously those are expensive propositions, but we have done our best on issue after issue in paying for them. We basically say, well, we're going to pay for them somehow. Cooper says, how much though? Do you have a price tag for all of this? So Sanders tries to answer with, well, I think it's about 30 trillion. Anderson Cooper, but Bernie, that's just your Medicare for all, right? Oh yeah, that's just Medicare for all. How about all the rest? Price tag for all these things. And then he finally said, he says, no, you mentioned making public colleges and universities tuition free and canceling all student debt. That's correct. That's what I want to do. And we're going to pay for that through a modest tax on Wall Street. People, this is insanity level. This is like talking to a 5-year-old who wants daddy to have 5 mansions, 3 cars, and all the amenities that wealthy people have, and just is saying, I don't care if our family can't afford it, I want it. And Bernie Sanders is, for all of the reality that he has served as the mayor of Burlington, Vermont, he served in Congress, he served as a U.S. Senator, and is a U.S. Senator. He has the reasoning, the logic, the mindset of a juvenile, demanding, outraged child. And every time someone points out to him, this has never worked anywhere. And look at Cuba and look at Venezuela. He's still, even though he says, I don't like the authoritarianism of the Cuban system, he's still praising Castro. I'll tell you one last point about these millennials, because we're going to be, if Bernie Sanders, is our presidential candidate, our job, not just the candidates, not just elected officials, not just party officials, the job of every American who sees the danger of Bernie Sanders, it's our job to make that danger clear to the average Joe American. Because I'm telling you what's happening with these young people, these millennials, and college kids are all behind Bernie Sanders. It's just so exciting. We're going to have a revolution. We're going to stand up. We're going to make life fair for everybody. None of them think it will change their life at all. None of them. They all think it's somebody else's money that will be taken away. I have story after story I could tell you from public speaking, from family stories, everyone getting behind Bernie Sanders thinking, Bernie Sanders platform, Bernie Sanders campaign, are thinking all the money that's going to pay for all this free stuff is coming from somebody else. Somebody else, not me. And so my life will be the same. I'll go to work, I'll get my paycheck, I'll come home, I'll buy my groceries, I'll pay my rent or my mortgage, I'll have a car, I'll have my clothes, I'll have my health care, everything will be, and nothing about me will change. And even after people point out, but actually, if you tried to even get close to even some of the proposals that Bernie Sanders has made, everyone in the country will pay more taxes. Everyone. You can't get there on taxing the rich or on Wall Street or on all the other crazy ideas he throws out. But young people don't see that. I don't mean just young people. There are plenty of people, frankly, of all ages, getting behind the delusion that Bernie Sanders is painting for them, that somehow everything in life you need can be free, everything can be free, and it won't cost you anything. The government will just give it to people. And as we all know, many times it's been pointed out, no such thing as a free lunch. And when the government promises to pay for something, what they're really promising is to take money away from other people. The government, Bernie Sanders is promising taxpayer money, individual Americans' money, to pay for the promise he's making to other individual Americans. The government has no money. It's never had any money. It doesn't have money. It only has available expenditures because it's taken money away from the American people. But this seems to be lost on many people supporting Bernie Sanders.